Very excited. Lori's very excited. Back for another Tuesday training. I'm excited too. I think this is going to be a good one. We're going to walk through functional anatomy principle number 7 today. I can't believe we're already on 7. It feels exciting to be this far along. And for those of you who are here, I can't quite see the live yet, but I'm going to get there. For those of you who are here watching on YouTube, please let me know that you're here. I will answer your questions in the chat as we move along. Here's what's going to happen today, guys. We are going to dive into anatomy principle number 7, mobility. This is a big topic. When I got my handle around this one, oh, big deal. It was a super big deal. And there's some clarity that I want to offer you. Like, what is this conversation on mobility as I use it clinically? What isn't this conversation on mobility that you might hear and get confused on in other places? And mostly why it matters when you're eliminating pain. So that's our conversation for today. I'm so glad that you're here. Lori, thanks for being live with me. I love having friends in the house to talk to while we're working this out. And if you are here in the live house, please know that we love having you here, and let us know that you're here. You can leave us a comment or like the video, and I'm going to open up chat here in a second and be able to also follow along. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm so glad you're here. You found us at just the right time for you, I can tell. I'm your host for the hour. I'm Gina Schatz, and these principles that we're working through are anatomy principles that I collated and put together as I was working clinically to, create lasting results for folks as I was navigating pain and injury, like I'm sure you do. This grouping, if you will, of anatomy principles applies to both manual and movement practitioners. I'm both. I've been at it for 31 years and it's still both. Like, all of these always apply. And I've vetted that. So I promise you that there's something here for you, whether you are a manual or movement practitioner. And the idea is to streamline these principles for you, for your consumption, so that you can then go apply them as well and create some real wins for you and the people that you serve. So we're here every Tuesday, doing Tuesday training for practitioners, both manual and movement practitioners. And we are talking functional anatomy, but like beyond what we learned in school. Sometimes we get to review a little bit, but what did we actually piece together from that anatomy? That's what we're here for on Tuesdays every week. So I love that you're here for the first time. If you are here for the first time or the 100th time, I love that you're here for the 100th time. Definitely let us know. Again, the live chat is open. Well, I say that it's open and I'm still staring at my phone if I'm really honest, but the live chat is open. So please feel free to, there we go. Please feel free to leave us some comments. Tuesdays. And let me just turn down that volume. You don't need to hear 2 of me. Hey, Perry, I'm so glad you're here. Valerie, what do you mean you couldn't log in? The Tuesday training. So if you're in the club, you can have club seats through the club, and go into the club app and click on the calendar and then click on Tuesday training, and the link will be right there for you. So you're welcome to, right, because it's the old link. Val, you're saying here in your comments, it's the old link. Go into the club and get the club seats so that you can join us live. We'd love to have you live. And whether you're here live in the club seats or live on YouTube, please know that this is your Q&A time. So ask me any questions, whether it applies to the principle that we're on or anything else that you would like some support on. I'm here literally for that purpose, to pour into you so that we can all make strides in the solutions that we're creating for the clients that we serve. And here we go. So I'm going to talk to you guys for about 30 minutes. I say that hesitantly because every once in a while I ramble a little bit longer, but I'm going to talk to you for 30 minutes about this principle number 7, mobility. And it might jar some questions as we're going. Leave them in the chat, leave them in the comment section, and let us know. And I will answer them as we go along. And then I'll stop our chat on this mobility principle and then open up the Q&A for anything. So this is your Q&A time. Please feel free to ask questions and just hold them for comments after we get through this principle if it's not related to the principle. Okay. Functional anatomy principle number 7, mobility. Let's talk about what mobility is. So there's a little moment necessity here, I think, on the difference between mobility, range of motion, flexibility. Sometimes we tend to confuse these terms. We offer tons of clarity about this in our community because the clarity gets you closer to the answer. So it's worth it to get clear on what it is and what it isn't. Lori, do you want to be hot seated right out of the gate? 7 minutes in, because you've got this, because you've heard this now and you've got this. Go ahead. What is it? Oh, you're muted. No, you're not muted. We can't hear you though. Oh, you just changed your headset. It's not, nope, can't hear you. Fudge. Can't hear you. Nope, can't hear you. Take them out.
I did.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Oh, now you can hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
was the headset. Or
Yeah,
how?
I've got something
Okay.
going on with my audio today.
Mhm.
Mobility. Well, are we talking mobility, range of motion, and flexibility? Do you want to?
Well, let's just say what mobility is, and then we'll say what it isn't.
Yeah, it's a function of ligaments. When we're talking mobility, it's ligaments.
Yes, when we're talking mobility, it's ligaments. So if we just put like a pencil period at the end of that idea and lock that in, that will create a whole lot of clarity for us to work with as we move forward. So mobility is a function of ligaments. Ligaments are connective tissue. We know this. We're going to just review our anatomy super quick. Like ligaments connect bone to bone. So ligaments are affected by the movement of bones, and bones are also affected by the constitution of the ligaments. Okay, so let's pause on that for a second. If the ligaments, I like to describe them as hammocks. If the ligaments are brand spanking new hammocks out of the bag, and you tie one end of that hammock to a tree and the other end of that hammock to another tree, a brand spanking new hammock that's never been exposed to weather will be a little taut, right? You'll hang out on that hammock and feel like, ooh, this is very sturdy, very sturdy. That sturdiness in that hammock is comparable to a particular sturdiness in our ligaments. But as we know, if we have a hammock that's been hanging out for a while, been weather beaten, the picture that comes to mind for me was when I was vacationing in the Cayman Islands and they had these hammocks out that were sea salt, sea air, wind blown, sun baked. And we got in these hammocks and they were a little closer to the sand, a little stretchier, but not stretch like in muscles, but like the cell makeup of the hammock had been worn out a little bit. Now that's not the same as what happens in our ligaments, meaning our ligaments don't wear out if they have more laxity. It's just that they can come with more laxity. The comparable picture though is like a hammock that sits closer to the sand. So there's more laxity in that ligament. Hammock still works, still holds you up, just holds you closer to the sand and not further away from the sand. So that amount of laxity in the ligaments is a different constitution type than the taut, very brand new hammock situation. So if you're thinking about ligaments and the constitution of ligaments, think about it in that range from a really taut brand new hammock to a very weather-beaten saggy hammock. Both still work, but they have different qualities to the constitutions. And why does that matter? Hi, Lana. Why does that matter? It matters because if ligaments and bones have a relationship, and they do, and the relationship comes to the plate for performance, if you will, while there's movement, then that means the movement of the bones, which happens through muscles. We talked about that in an earlier anatomy principle. If the movement of the bones, which occurs through actions of muscles, is present, the ligaments that connect those two bones together are affected by the movement and the alignment of those bones, and vice versa. The alignment of the bones is affected by the constitution of the ligaments between them. So if we have a saggy hammock situation of ligaments, then there's not a whole lot holding these two bones together. They're kind of saggy in the middle. But if we have the brand new taut hammock style, now the two bones are held together with a little bit more oomph. And that affects movement, and movement affects what is happening to the bones because muscles move them. Okay, so let's just pause that for a second. Mobility is an identifier of ligaments and the constitution of ligaments and their effect on bones and bones' effect on them, period. What mobility isn't is, you want to say those, Lori? What mobility isn't? You're muted.
My audio today is giving me a little bit of grief. Well, what it isn't is, do you mean like range of motion and flexibility? Yeah,
Yeah.
the other two, right?
Yep. So mobility is not range of motion and mobility is not flexibility. What's flexibility, Lori?
Muscle. It relates to muscles.
Yeah, the muscle spindles themselves
Mhm.
and how changeable they are and elastic they are and responsive to contraction on the other side of the lever. And we talked about that muscle activity in earlier principles. And what's range of motion?
I think of that as like bone structure.
Yes. Yep. Range of motion. So bony landmarks at the end of bones, the shapes of those bone end points, if you will, have a different relationship to each other and how they fit. And Paul Grilly did amazing work with bony endpoints so that we could understand that the shapes and sizes of bones and how they fit together is really the key. Not that a bony landmark, a bony endpoint shape on its own is an issue. None of that is an issue, by the way, but the way they relate to each other. So for example, in a ball and socket joint, it's really easy to see. If this is the socket and this is the ball, head of the femur or head of the humerus and the acetabulum or the glenohumeral junction, if the socket is very deep and the ball is a larger bony endpoint, the fit between them is different than if the bony endpoint here is smaller and the socket is more generous. There's more movement available between those two endpoints. So we know that from Paul Grilly's work. Yoga teachers seem to be the target audience for this next comment, and that's said only with love, of course, but they're not the only ones who can make this mistake. And the mistake is, do your best not to get into your own head that it's got to be the bony endpoints, it's got to be the shapes of the bones, it's got to be a lack of range of motion because of the bones, because of the bones. Do your best to literally put that third. Literally put it third. And the reason is, unless you've absolutely addressed the muscles and the lever system and who's supposed to contract and who's supposed to lengthen, like we've talked about in earlier principles, and unless you've also brought in this constitution type on mobility and considered the ligaments and their effect on bones and the movement of bones effect and leniency on ligaments, there's a whole lot of territory as a body worker that you haven't explored yet. And you might give up too soon and point to the bony landmarks and say, the bones are going to make this impossible for this person. And the last thing I'll say about that is it's really, really, really uncommon that the way we're designed is faulty. It's like really uncommon. I would say it doesn't exist. And I've had conversations where folks are like, yeah, but what about? And I get that in pathology situations. But if you're trying to remedy, and I know we all are, if you're trying to remedy and mitigate pain and functional pain, you really want to address the muscles in their flexibility and their action on the lever system, and also bring in this mobility idea on the ligament structures and what they're doing and address them. Here's the other reason why. Muscles are changeable. Ligaments, to a much less extent, are also soft tissue, so they can be changed tiny bit. Hi, Val. Not a lot. We don't really want to change ligaments. But what we do with our muscles can positively impact our ligament structures. So meaning that we can create change and effect on muscles and on ligaments, and we can't do anything about bone formation. Like that's fixed. So we don't want to jump there too quickly and be in a fixed, I can't do anything about this mind space, because then our job is over. Then our work is done and we haven't created the result that we want. So knowing what mobility is and knowing what it isn't, equally weighted in value as far as I'm concerned. And again, when I added in this idea of mobility and ligament structure, it really changed the game for me. In fact, it created wins for me in a population of people who tend to have more laxity in their ligaments, the hypermobile crowd, including my own body. It really created leaps and bounds of positive effect once I considered that it could be ligaments and not bones. Right? It could be ligaments, and I need to do something different with the muscles than somebody else who didn't have ligament constitution. So what we do with someone's muscles and what we do with their alignment based on the scale that where they land on that mobility spectrum, what we do for them is very different. And that gets us right into, why does this matter? Why am I grinding down on this principle number 7 of mobility? Because it matters a lot when you are in the business of eliminating pain. Someone with laxity in their ligaments needs something very different in their body to remedy pain than somebody who doesn't have that laxity in there. I don't know why I keep saying laxness, than someone who doesn't have laxity in their ligament structures. They just need something very different. So once we know about mobility and we understand what's happening with the ligaments, then it dictates what we do in our treatment plan. And that's what we all want. We want our treatment plans written on the outset, and then we want to just do the work of creating a win on that treatment plan and then get our client out of pain. That's what we all want. At least that's what you've all told me that you want. So what it is, ligaments. What it isn't, bony landmarks. It's also not about muscles. And why it matters, because it changes what we do for someone in a treatment setting. Now, what we do for them gets to also be parsed out. So we want to be really thoughtful about that. We don't want to do any of the work that we do, just rote memorization, checklist. There's no matrix. It's not like that. And we definitely want to be present to the body in front of us. But there's some general rules that apply wherever we are on that mobility spectrum. So in a hypomobile constitution, generally speaking, what we want to do is create a lot of responsiveness in the lengthening muscle fibers on the opposite side of the lever system. So we started with principle number 4, stretching doesn't exist. I stand by that. And when we have a hypomobile constitution, a very taut hammock constitution of ligaments, we definitely want to focus on getting those fibers on the antagonist side of the lever system to lengthen, 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 lengthen. How we do that, though, is already told to us through an earlier anatomy principle. We lengthen by contracting the main guy. You don't just lengthen to lengthen. Otherwise, you're distorting the lever system, and that can lead to pain. So sometimes I see that. I see folks who have a hypomobile constitution. Oh, my client's so tight. And I put that in air quotes because that doesn't really give you enough information. We talk about tightness types here a lot on Tuesday training. Please go back and find one of those trainings if that supports you. Because they mean different things and they will require different things from you in your treatment plan. But in a hypomobile constitution, they do appear to have less freedom of movement in their body, less freedom altogether, which I get could be called tightness. I totally get that. But what we don't want to do is just focus on lengthening, 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 especially on someone who's hypomobile, who has a lot of contractile nature available to them in their muscles, just given how close their bones are being held together by that taut hammock-like ligament. So we can overdo the lengthening you can't overdo lengthening, but you can overdo the lengthening by missing how to make something lengthen, meaning by contracting the opposite side, and really create some soreness in folks. In fact, I have a story about this. I remember very early on in my bodywork track, so we don't need to talk, well, it's 31 years ago, I've already told you. And I was supporting a family member with some tightness. And he said, this is tight. This is tight. I need you to work on it. I need you to dig in there. I need you to get your elbow in there. And I was like, absolutely not. You're hypomobile. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do other types of release work. And I would like you, my dear family member, to contract so that the other side can lengthen. And then I'll support the lengthening after you get a contraction in that lever. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. And this is classic. For those of you who are manual practitioners, this is classic where our clients get a little bit dependent on us and maybe even lazy, and they want you to do all the work. But the body's designed to move, which means it's self-sufficient. It doesn't move from the outside in, it moves from the inside out. So as I was trying to balance this lever system with my family member and they didn't want to do the moving, they wanted me to do all the work, I knew because of this principle that I could harm them. Well, they ended up taking a tool that I had with me, a bodywork tool that I had traveled with to visit them, and they took, which is a release tool. I don't even use it anymore. I don't even want to tell you the name of it because, again, I don't believe in that anymore. But they took that tool and they worked on themselves for a good 25 minutes while I wasn't in the room, and the next day could barely move. And at that point had created an acute situation for themselves, was almost in tears and literally begging me for anything that I could do to help. And at that point, they created an acute situation because they overlengthened, and those muscle spindles responded to that. They didn't know what to do. Muscle spindles respond by lengthening in response to a contraction. Now, I'm not saying for manual practitioners that you should never do any stripping or any of the things that we've learned to do with our hands. I use those tools too. I use my fingers in that way, and it's valuable. But if I'm trying to navigate the balancing out of an issue that's caused by hypomobility, I need to also include contraction of the muscle, not just lengthening and stripping muscle spindles. Perry says, good point. I like getting my clients to move when I'm done with treatments. Yes, exactly. That's the wrap up. That's like the whole, that puts the bow on it for sure. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, hypermobile people do require much more movement, much more contraction, and it's harder for them because the ligament and the laxity in the ligament can present with misaligned bones, meaning like the sagginess of the hammock is now affecting the alignment of the bones, which means that because they require more movement, more contraction, more muscle power to make up for the laxity in the ligaments, that's how you balance that out. It's harder for them to do the moving and the contracting to get the strength in the muscles if the bones aren't aligned to begin with, which they can very easily not be aligned because of the laxity in the ligaments that allows them to move so freely. We reviewed that actually at great length in our spring masterclass on the lever system, maximizing the lever system. It's more about alignment than it is about power and contracting on a certain muscle. One must come before the other, which is also part of our formula, which I know Val loves. And our functional anatomy formula we talked about in last spring's masterclass. Okay, so knowing the mobility helps us know what that body needs to balance out what's happening in their joint structures, in their lever systems, and then creates a pain-free experience, which is what we're all after, a pain-free experience. Now, there's lots of tests on mobility, and you may already have one. And if you do, I highly recommend you use it. I wouldn't guess what your client's mobility score is until you've walked maybe 100 clients through the mobility test. Like I can kind of tell at this point, but I've been running mobility assessments since with this family member 30 years ago. So now I can kind of tell, and every once in a while, I'm still caught off guard too. I'm like, wow, I didn't catch that. Okay, good thing I listened to the body and didn't just let my brain do all the talking. So use whatever mobility test you have and use it often until you are really proficient with it and you can understand and sort of like start to register this type of mobility feels like this when I'm in the room with it. This type of mobility feels like that when I'm in the room with it. This type of mobility requires this in my instruction as a movement provider, or this from my hands as a manual practitioner, and then vice versa. Really practice that so that they definitely feel different, they respond differently. And if you don't have a mobility assessment that you like, well, we can absolutely help you with that. The one that we use in our community, the SHOTS method practitioners are all trained in, and also we offer it in our academy. It's a 13-step, 13 step. No, it's 11. I just made that up. I made up the number 13. It's 11. I don't know where I came up with 13. Number 13's been on my mind lately. It's an 11-point mobility assessment. And the way you check for mobility, again, is at the joint structures where the ligaments live. We share that in our applied functional anatomy course. We share it in our inspired beyond anatomy course. We share it again in inspired beyond anatomy level 2. My reason for sharing that is because we use it so much because it creates so much clarity about what does this body need from me as the practitioner to be able to mitigate this pain. So it's really worth it to have a good mobility assessment at your fingertips, at the ready, as part of your toolbox that you use all the time. Don't skimp out on that one because it gives so much information. And we're going to actually workshop that out in our course that we're running through our club in January. We're going to run through all of these anatomy principles one by one and workshop them out and troubleshoot them and mastermind on client issues. And what do I do if I thought it was this, but I think it's that? And we'll definitely be going over this mobility assessment again. Can't really teach it to you on a Tuesday training because I need to see you and spot you, and you need to be doing the movement and stuff like that. And some of us aren't here on camera. So use your mobility assessment for now, or come play with us if you want to learn how we do it and then what we do about it also. And really keep in mind that the ligaments are what you're measuring. Even though you're moving bones and you're touching and exercising muscles, whether you're a manual or movement provider, there's still ligaments in the mix that are making a huge impact on the type of pain that the person's body is exhibiting. Like there's a reason for it. And always go with muscles first because it's quickest, easiest, then ligaments in consideration. And that's like a close second to muscles. And then very much third is bone formation. And keep them in that order so that you don't quit too soon and give up too quickly. And then make your way in that order. So I hope that this anatomy principle has created some clarity for you and that you have some value now. Let me know in the comment section. Thanks for letting me know, Lana and Perry, that you are here and that you're getting good takeaways. Let me know what is your takeaway? What's the aha that you had walking through this today? And I know some of you have heard this mobility principle a few times. In fact, we ran through our anatomy principles, I think it was a year and a half ago in Tuesday training. Always worth repeating them, always worth reviewing. There's just so much gold to be mined through these functional anatomy principles. They just create a ton of clarity. It's like they clear the path to just like get on with it and not get too bogged down. So I'd love to hear what your ahas, what your takeaways were. Lana says 13, because you have too new to add, apparently. Maybe, Lana, I might actually have some new ones. I've been thinking about that actually, because Lori and I just taught a functional gait assessment, or what do I want to call it? Functional movement.
Specialty session.
Yeah, I had all my functionals and specialties and all the words jumbled up. Sorry about that. We just taught a gait workshop, a gait masterclass. Not a masterclass. We just taught a functional movement class on gait. God, I finally got it out. Too bad this is live. I can't edit any of that out. It's okay. But we just walked through some important functional patterns in gait. And to your point, Lana, thanks for laughing with me. It really brought up toes. And so in our mobility assessment, the 11-step assessment, we don't include those. And I was like, maybe I want to add toes in there. So you're right, Lana. There might be 13 coming. 2025 will be like, there's a new assessment, kids. Let's go. Perry says, I haven't heard of this principle so plainly defined exactly. Oh, good. I'm so glad that it was clear for you. I think the clarity in our understanding creates so much value for us in our implementation. So I'm really grateful that it feels clear for you, because that means you'll do something with it, which is great. So let's hear, what are your nuggets today? What did you hear in this principle that you're like, ah, right, got that one? Anything new? Lori, did you come up with anything new today?
I did. Can you hear
Oh,
me
good.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was about hypomobility.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know that the muscle gets to lengthen. And what happens if it over lengthens, right? I think with hypomobility, sometimes we're like, it can never go too far because it's really locked in. I'm like, of course it could. So your example about your family member
Hmm.
really dig it in there. It's like, oh yeah, it could go um, too far
Yeah,
with the lengthening.
yeah. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm glad that it registered for you, because I know we talk a whole lot in our mastery
Mhm.
program about hypermobility. We tend to spend a
Mhm.
little bit more time there. I might be instigating that with my own hypermobility, but a lot of
Me
us
too.
present, yeah, a lot of us
Yeah.
present with hypermobility. But there's just as much need for us to mitigate pain in hypomobile
Mhm.
constitutions. So I'm glad that you brought this up, and I want to offer a bit of clarity too. It's not so much that we can over lengthen a muscle by working manually. I don't want us to confuse that. And it's not that we are creating like a tensile stressed situation on
Mhm.
fibers. That's not really the point. The point, though, is back to the lever system.
Right.
So if we know, and we do through our principles, that the movement happens at a joint and that the movement is designed as a lever. One side contracts and the other side lengthens in response, because stretching doesn't exist.
Mhm.
It's a response to contraction. Does it exist? Like, yeah, like hear me on this, right? Don't think about stretching as the primary action, because it's not. It's in response to contraction, which means then if we are focused on lengthening fibers manually, stripping muscle fibers, which manual providers know how to do, or if we're focused on stretching, which Thai massage practitioners do, yogis do, even personal trainers do, stretch, 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 stretch. Unless we are actively engaging the muscle on the opposite side of that lever into an active contraction, not on the slack passive contraction,
Mhm.
but unless we are actively contracting that muscle on the other side of the lever, we have imbalanced the lever system by
Mhm.
only focused on stripping muscle fibers on one side of it. Some providers will say, that's not true. That's all I do on my table. And people leave very happy. Totally cool. Good. Awesome. Amazing. But here's what I'll say. In my clinical experience, when I used to do that, because I did, I had I had very specific thumbs, and I would work them and get in between muscle fibers. And I loved it. It felt like I was doing some kind of deep dive, and like actually getting in between muscle spindles. And I probably was. And through the fascia, and we talk a lot about, well, you can't really affect the muscles without affecting the fascia. Right, exactly, totally. But when I, in those instances, only lengthened the muscles and I didn't reinstate the equalness that's needed in the lever system, once they stood up from my table, they might have felt better in the spot that I got rid of adhesions, like with my hands, but it didn't create efficient movement as they walked back over to put their shoes on. You could see that it was altered still. In my clinical setting, that doesn't equal I fixed it. I addressed one part and left them to do the rest. And that's not how I work. I do the whole thing, wrap it up from beginning to end, put a bow on it, like Perry said. So it's not, I don't want us to think that if we only lengthen that we're lengthening muscles too far, especially now that I know that YouTube, you can take clips out of it. Do not clip me and say that I said that. I didn't say that. Listen to the whole thing. You don't overstretch someone and over lengthen muscles. The point is, if you are here to resolve musculoskeletal discomfort and pain, this principle and the previous principles all together remind us what's needed in the treatment plan, which is I need to address and understand the mobility. If it's hypomobile, lengthening is necessary in muscle spindles. And in order to create lengthening, I've got to induce that through contraction on the opposite side of the lever. That's what we know. So thanks for bringing that up, Lori, and giving me another chance to soapbox it out here, because it's really, that distinctions are important. Okay. All right, great. So let me you guys know who are here watching live. If you have any questions or if you have a golden nugget takeaway, I'd love to hear that too. You never know what goodness could come of that.
I concur with Lori on that. And I
Yeah,
have a question for you.
I'd love it.
What did you do with the client? It's your patient family member who was left in that acute state.
That's not good, Val. You know, right? It's because it's family. It's like casual, you know, they're not listening. They think you're not, you know, all the family shit comes
Yeah.
up, to be honest. It was a little rough that day. And it was also, here's the thing. It's really incredibly challenging for me to be in a space with someone and see them uncomfortable. Like I am here on the planet to do this work. I can't even focus my attention away from someone who's in pain. I immediately want to go in and intervene. But the way I intervene isn't, oh, I got it. I'm the healer. I can do it for you. That's not, I intervene the way I work, right? Same way I work with my clients. So it was really difficult for me to see him struggle in so much acute pain while we're all on vacation together. It was really difficult. And so I don't want to get too much, this is like off topic, but I did approach him with a soft parasympathetic approach and was like, look, I'm really sad that you're uncomfortable. And he got a little blamey, like, well, I told you yesterday I needed help, and now look what's happened. I'm like, yeah, but you did it. I never touched you. So there's a little bit of that, and it made it rough. It made it rough. And that just really, it really taught me that I get to be really clear. You guys, you know this, Val, as a graduate in our community.
Yes.
You get to be really clear in your messaging and your why for someone, right? I'm not just going to go in and be bossy pants. Do this, don't do that. You do that. I'm not going to do that without a why behind it. Because if I can enroll my client into understanding my thought process and use the anatomy to back it up, so it's not a personality
You
thing.
went away.
What's that?
I can't hear you.
Oh, I don't know why. You can hear me, Lori? Yeah, I don't know what's happening with the sound today, guys. But if I can enroll my client with clarity and use the anatomy to back it up, so it's not a personality, I don't want to, you want me to, but I don't, that kind of thing, then we all win, right? I get to see them leave not in pain. They get to leave not in pain, and the method actually works. So it helped me, it helped me get really clear. Like, even when it's a family member, be clear. Even when it's someone that you don't have, a clinical environment around, you're on vacation or something, enroll them in what's accurate, right? Don't be lax about it or think or assume that they would know, or be even upset that they didn't listen, right? If I had gotten upset that he didn't listen, then we both would have been at it with each other, and that definitely wouldn't have worked either. So same thing with clients. Right. So it was a learning moment for me on a lot of things. This is how quickly acute can happen. This is what happens when you lengthen and you don't contract. This is what happens when you're not an authority in your messaging and tell someone, look, I love you, don't, right? Like, sometimes you got to say that when someone's like adamant about how they think the treatment plan should go. And also we talk about this in our method, in our mastery program. You get to be the authority, right? Based on knowledge and skill, not on authoritarianism, but based on knowledge and skill, you get to be like, look, this is how it works. This is how the body is designed. I know these principles like the back of my hand. We've got to contract in order to create a lengthening. Has to happen. That's the way the body's designed, dear client and loved one. So that's what I learned.
And I teach that to my people all the time.
Good. Yeah.
We got a lot of Gina-isms in my sessions.
I'm not upset about that at all. But
I didn't think you would be.
it lights me up, actually. I love that you're providing great value, Val. I love that. Okay, so we do have some time now for some questions. Are there any questions? Val, do you have any other questions? Lori, do you have any questions? Lana, Perry, any of the other folks? I see you guys here all on YouTube. Anybody else who's here? Anybody have any questions? This is your Q&A time, so hit me up with whatever's on your mind, and I would love to support you. Anybody?
Not a question, it's more of a comment about
Okay.
messaging and
Hmm.
what you said. We talk about it a lot. We come back, what does the body tell us? Or not the body, but what does the anatomy tell us?
Mhm.
And your messaging about the language to say, this is what I know the body, the anatomy tells us the body to the client. Like that way it isn't about them, it's not about me, it's not about any of us. It's about this is what I know about the body, this is what I know about the anatomy. And that's another aha. I get to try that out.
Yeah, I really like that approach. This is what I know about the body, and you just lay it out for them. Little mini like anatomy segments, right? Like don't bore them with all of your clinical talk because they don't really want that, or they would have gone to school for it. So little bite size. And I'm going to use this example before, Lori, with your aha. Keep in mind, guys, that they're not going to hear you clearly the first time, right? Like the share that you offered, Lori, gave me another opportunity to speak it clearly again, right? One more time through. Either I didn't say it clearly, or you didn't hear all the words, or there was just or only some of the words came in while you were taking notes. Who knows what goes on while we're listening? We all do that, by the way. This is not a thing about you, Lori, right? Our clients are listening with the same ears and nervous systems that we have. They're not going to hear it all the first time. They're in pain. They're like, how long is she going to talk? Because I really want her to fix my pain. And you also get to explain it to them so that they can be on board with what we're going to do together. And that was a huge piece of it for me as a primarily manual provider for a long time in my career, that it wasn't a passive experience for my clients anymore. I knew enough now about the body that they had to participate. So I got to enroll them in that. How did I do that? Not by saying, I don't want to do all the work. You do some of the work. Like that's just a temper tantrum and pouty. It really wasn't about that. It was like, now I understand the body better. And now when I understand the body better as a machine that's designed to move, in order for me to eradicate your pain, there's got to be some movement in here. Doesn't mean you got to become a personal trainer or a yoga teacher if you're a massage therapist. Just move the joint, right? Like have the muscle do the contracting instead of you lifting their limb for them. So I also got to communicate with them enough about what I learned about the body and then maybe repeat it even in that moment, because they might not have heard me the first time, especially when I was transitioning from what was mostly passive for them for a long period of time to now an interactive type of treatment. You know, I got to evolve as I was in practice as well with them. So we get to enroll our people. We get to explain it to them based on the body's design. And we also get to recognize they're probably not going to understand it the first time you say it. And it's not because they're not smart. It's because of the way the brain takes in information and how we hear things. So say it, know what you're saying, be really clear about that. They're going to know what they will know the first time is whether you're full of shit. If you're making up stuff, or you kind of know it, they will sense that, smell it, and see it on your face before they'd ever hear the clarity in the truth that you have. So just know that. You got to know your anatomy, guys. You got to know how it works. And then once you say it the first time, say it again, specific to their body. So this is what I know about the body. Ligaments and constitutions, XYZ. In your body, with your ligaments, ABC. So now you just said the same thing twice, but you connected it back to them. Now they're probably hearing you more, and now you can start to take action. So you don't really want to get into the do it because I said so. That's authoritative. That's not an authority. Like, I know enough to be able to bring you to a new solution together. That's what an authority does. Okay, love this. Great. All right, any other questions? We have a couple more minutes left. Does anybody who's here have any questions? Okay, and if you're watching on the replay and you have questions, leave them in the comment section. I will personally go back in and answer every single question. I'm happy to do that. If you are here and you got value, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you got some value if you haven't typed anything in the chat yet, so I know that there's some goodness. Lana says it's a two-way street. It sure is, my friend. It's a two-way street. Yeah, we're working with another human and their body. It's actually a three-way street, really. Val's got a thumbs up. Okay, great. Love it. Thumbs up for me. Let me know that you got some good value here. And if you are watching on the replay and you found value here and you liked what you heard, also a thumbs up. That would be awesome. I would love to know that from you. What we're doing this week, if you haven't already heard, we are having our GAIT Assessment Analysis Masterclass tomorrow for all manual and movement practitioners. There is so much gold here. I think that's where I was getting the 13 from, Lana, actually, but you're making me think I should change our mobility assessment either way. But there's 13 steps of GAIT that we explore, meaning each part of GAIT is its own functional anatomy step, if you will. There's like a whole lever system, full-on movement happening in 13 different places inside GAIT. We're not, Carrie's got a thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. So we're gonna explore 11 of them in our masterclass, tons of anatomy and pour into you, but then we're gonna switch lanes pretty quickly and we're gonna workshop that out. Like, how do I do that in my body? What do I say? How do I get my client on board? Val says, will the GAIT masterclass be recorded? Yes. And will the content be included in the club, you mean? The masterclass is included in the club. I'll get to that in a second, but yes, it'll be recorded. And Valerie actually is the reason why we're doing this as our masterclass in December, because she's like, look, I know GAIT, I know these steps, we workshop it out, and there's a lot more here. And I was like, you are right, my friend, there is a lot more here. So after we workshop it out in our body, then we're going to open it up for some masterminding on, well, what happens when my client doesn't show up like it's supposed to look in the book? What happens if my client wears the tread on one of their shoes but not the other? What does that mean in their GAIT? What am I supposed to address then? We're going to workshop that out, because that's really where the the rubber hits the road kind of thing. So we're going to pack that all into a 3-hour masterclass tomorrow. Yes, it will be recorded if you can't make it. I know it's during work hours. Guys, unless I train in the middle of the night, it's always work hours. So I get that. Of course, they're always recorded and you'll have access to that. You're welcome to join us for the masterclass. Please feel free to do that. We can drop a link for you here below the video. And also, if you're in the club, if you're in the Shots Method Community Club, it's included. So you're already set and ready to go, and the replays will be available for you there inside the club too. So feel free to register for that, even if you're not in the club. You do not have to be in the club to join us for that. And the recording will be delivered to you in wherever you're at. And then in the club, we're going to have 12 days of Christmas. Actually, it's 12 days of Gait Games. And I have tons of videos to show you, like, one of the ways that I quell my sorrow when I'm out in public, when I see people who I know are creating pain in their body or probably already are in pain, is I'll just take a real quick picture, never a face, a real quick picture or a little video. And I've taken some videos of folks in the airport. I'm like, how are they walking? They've got to be in such pain. Is it weird if I approach them and ask them if I can help them? And I don't have a treatment setting in an airport. So we're going to be taking pictures and videos along the way of our friends and loved ones, and maybe a stranger without their face along the way. We're going to play with those for 12 days in the club so that we can really boost up our visual assessment skills, our implementation skills, and then get quicker at putting a treatment plan together by making those assessments and connecting the dots. So this masterclass is going to be awesome, and the Gait Games that follow it too. If you haven't joined us in the club yet, come join us. It's my game for 7 days, and you can play with us for free. You won't have all 12 of the Gait Games, but you might decide to stay after that, but at least you'll have 7 of those days. So come and join us in the club if you want to, and definitely sign up for the Gait Masterclass if you think that there'd be value here for you and all of the functional mechanics involved in walking and running and swimming. So one of the club members said, hey, I noticed that the same stride that happens in walking happens in swimming. And that practitioner just taught a workshop over the weekend for swimmers and created the same wins by adding these steps of gait. And I was like, wow, I didn't even see that in swimming, but it makes total sense. Makes total
Wow.
sense. Movement has to come from the hips, right? And what is the movement in the hips? So if you know that in gait, you know it in running, and now you also know it in swimming. No, Val, isn't that cool? Yeah, you'll see the comment in the club. So anyway, we have a lot going on this week. I know it's a busy time of year for everybody, and we get to keep our head in the game and just get little bite-sized morsels of goodness between now and the end of the year. We will be back for one more Tuesday training next week. One more Tuesday training next week for our wrap up for the year. And then our last Tuesday of the year, we will not be live, but we'll have a greatest hits replay for you. So don't worry about that. So I'm wishing everybody lots of goodness as you're preparing for your holiday, whatever holiday it is that you are celebrating. I will see you all next week for Tuesday training. One more, our last run for the live for the year. And anybody who's coming to the masterclass on Gait, I will see all of you tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here and for asking such great questions and adding so much good content into our share today. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work that you do in the world. I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.